we are well into fall camp season now, and we've gotten to the point where fans are complaining on Twitter about what some player in a red jersey or who some player in a red jersey is, who it may or may not be. It was confirmed to be Miles Kitselman. We've reached that point where the fans are just really, really worried about their quarterback situation. But there are some pretty major elephants in the room that we need to address, Adam. And one that you actually reported on, I believe, yesterday with the wide receiver room, which is the fact that you've got two guys down right now in Chris Brazzell and Mike Matthews. And this is not a very deep wide receiver room. And anytime you have an injury scare with a group like that, it's immediately a concern. So, Adam, how concerned should Tennessee fans be about the state of the wide receiver room? And is it something that you think trickles into the regular season?
Well, I mean, that's the whole reason it matters, I think, is that the possibility that it could trickle into the regular season. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think it should be I don't think Tennessee fans should see it as the sky is falling. Chris Brazzell's injury is day-to-day. He'll probably be back to full-fledged participant this week. Mike Matthews is day-to-day. He'll probably be the same, back sometime this week. And so you can say, hey, it's not that big of an issue because two guys had minor injuries. That being said, if this was a regular season game week, if they had played on Sunday, Chris Brazzell would be out or at best limited. Mike Matthews would have been out or at best limited. And, you know, I went out there and saw the practice on Sunday morning, and the starting receivers were Braylon Staley, freshman Travis Smith, and walk-on Trey Weary. And that's a problem if that's your starting wide receivers. No shade against those guys, but that's a problem. So you can see how depth issues could creep up really quickly. And so it's just, it's something to watch. That's what it's not, the sky is not falling, but you can just see how fragile that unit is, that it just cannot take injuries. We've seen now, just Josh Heupel's fifth season, we can kind of determine that they need 4, probably 5 receivers. They run 3 receivers. They've gotten the last couple of years into using a fourth, to rotating a fourth guy in, and then you're going to have an injury somewhere in there, so you need a fifth. Well, to have at least freshmen pan out, and maybe Amari Jefferson, maybe somebody else. It's just the numbers aren't there.
Yeah, you absolutely can't afford to have any more losses in this receiving core. And it's kind of funny you didn't even mention Radarius Jackson being in that mix. Yeah. You mentioned a walk-on and Trey Weary, which is, it's not something you want necessarily, although you did find a nice walk-on last year at safety, Will Brooks. Sometimes those guys are able to work some wonders. But that is an issue that has arisen here recently. Like within the last 48 hours, people have been discussing it. But there's a couple more that come to mind that have been developing over the last few months. And one of them is this Boo Carter situation that we've been monitoring for a while. And I watched Josh Heupel's press conference on Media Day, and it basically just sounded like he's got a few things that he needs to do in order to get back into the fold. From your perspective, what steps has he taken to get back in a rhythm with this team?
Yeah, he's got to go through his conditioning, right? You're in trouble, you got to run. He's done those sort of things behind closed doors. He's got to work his way physically into those sort of things. He went to the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, I think 3 straight days. That was, you hate to say it's punishment because it's like a charity thing, but I think that was done to give him a little bit of perspective. Hey buddy, you got a platform, you make a lot of money in NIL doing this. Like, just think about like how fortunate you are to be playing college football. That sort of message, I think, is what Josh Heupel wanted Boo to get. I don't know how long this is going to go. When we go to practice and see him, he does stretch, and then once they get into drills, positional drills, he goes off on his own with a GA or trainer or whatever. and does his own conditioning. If you didn't know any better, you would think he was an injured player because he's sort of over there in the corner with the injured players. After a few minutes, the team goes outside. Boo Carter does not go with them. So some of it is he's taking punishment like you would normally think a guy would take punishment. But part of it is also he's excluded. It's almost like the exclusion from the team is part of the punishment. It's sort of the embarrassment of it. It's sort of hey, all the cool kids are at this table and you got to sit in the corner by yourself. That's sort of the feel of it. I mean, I don't know Boo Carter personally. I've only interviewed him a handful of times about football, but he I think that was part of it. Did I lose you guys?
Very briefly.
Yeah,
it's all good.
There.
We were talking a little bit about what was going on with Boo Carter, and of course, you mentioned the fact that he's like not allowed to hang out with the cool kids right now. He's got to work off to himself, and we've heard a lot about, or not a lot, but just a little bit about different punishments these universities can levy with like NIL and other things. Is that going on at all? Do you even know anything about potential fines or whatever in the NIL compensation he's receiving?
No, I don't. Now the rev share, he would have signed the revenue sharing contract to the school most likely back in the summer before he had any absences, because I think his absences were late in the summer.
Yeah.
Most of those contracts were done early July, but that's interesting if the timing would have affected that. In terms of NIL, I don't know. And all those contracts are written up differently. NIL collectives have gotten creative the past couple of years about being able to squeeze more incentives into those contracts, but I don't know Boo's specific contracts. So, I mean, I think it comes down to this. If Boo Carter does all the things that Josh Heupel lays out for him, he'll have a chance to be back in the lineup, eventually back in the starting lineup and make an impact on the team. If he doesn't, he won't. And so I think the ball is in Boo's court, that's for sure. I think he's figured out they can play without him, but they are much better if he's on the field.
Yeah, so that's two pretty major elephants we've just addressed. We need to move on to elephant number 3 now, which is the quarterback situation, which,
Yes.
Of course, that has been talked about ad nauseum just since the spring game, really. And there were some things floating around today, I think maybe about an interview with Mike Keith saying they're going to use a little bit more 12 personnel to help out the quarterbacks, whoever that may be, in order to just make his life a little bit easier against those odd fronts, because that's kind of the counter to what the counter was to the Heupel offense in the first place, why it was able to be slowed down in 2023. What is the very latest on the quarterback situation at Tennessee?
Yeah, I could see why they would use 2 tight ends for any other reason than the receivers. That's a thin position. It's just early camp, but I've seen a lot of drops by receivers, none by the tight ends. Tight ends look great. Kitzelman looks great. Ethan Davis looks great. The freshmen look good. So they're talented and heavy and experienced at tight end. I like what they have at tight end. There's more question marks, I think, at certainly at wide receiver. So I could see why they would go that route. Quarterback's interesting because it's technically a 3-man race, but with all due respect to George McIntyre, I think it's probably a 2-man race. I think he's gonna be a good player who's a really good recruit. They like where he's at. I think they think he's ahead of schedule. But I think the best thing for George McIntyre, the best thing for the team is if he develops as a freshman as supposed to, and then he has a chance to compete for the starting job next season, either with Merklinger or Faison Brandon or whoever. But I think it's probably a 2-man race. I think it'd be hard to get McIntyre ready that quickly to start against Syracuse or whatever. Asked somebody around the program a few days ago. I said, who starts if Tennessee plays tomorrow? Who's the starting quarterback? And this person said Jake Merklinger. And I said, who's the starting quarterback if they play in 2 weeks? And he said, that's a little harder. And I think that's sort of where we're at. Jake Merklinger, you can see his familiarity with the offense, with the drills, with the practice, with the personnel, and all those things. You can see that as a plus. But the longer that this thing goes and the deeper we get into camp, like the more opportunity that Aguilar could close that gap. And so it's really just about if he can close the gap or not. I think it would surprise me if Merklinger won the job, but it wouldn't shock me. I still think Aguilar's the guy, though. I mean, that's why they got him, because they needed a guy with experience, and he at least has that. And you would think he would have some upside because he's still learning the offense, learning the personnel, learning everything about the offense. And once he gets it, he should get better and better. Merklinger is not a finished product, but you would think what you have right now is probably what you're going to get from Merklinger, at least between now and the opener.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about Jake Merklinger. We had Ryan Shepard on about a month ago talking about the quarterback race between the three of them. And I'm with you on George McIntyre. I think that's probably the best thing for him to just be in a bit of a developmental role this year before taking on those starting reps. But, Shump was telling us Merklinger is probably the best fit for that offense just because, Heupel his system is designed around quarterbacks taking care of the ball through the air. And Merklinger is not a guy that historically, at least just back to his high school days, I should say, has turned the ball over much. I think he threw maybe 2 interceptions his final year of high school. So that's an interesting point you bring up there, just with the quarterback race. Jordan, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to ask how Aguilar's development has been so far, because I've heard that he's been spending extra hours trying to learn the playbook and everything like that. And as you mentioned, some people have said that Merklinger looks like he could be the starter as of right now. I'm just wondering how Aguilar has adapted to this new playbook and how he's essentially just looked at practice.
Lost you guys for a second, but I heard Merklinger.
Oh, I was just saying, how has Joey Aguilar been since he's been adjusting to the new playbook and everything? And does he look like he's acting that he's made enough development to get some playing time and be ready to go by the start of the season?
He looks more comfortable each day. I mean, some of the offense is going to be turned toward whichever quarterback is in the lead, I think. Offense can be adjusted based on who the quarterback is. I think Aguilar and Merklinger, their skill sets are close enough that you could kind of go with either one, especially if this competition goes close to the season. Not worried about who the starter is once they name. But yeah, Aguilar looks comfortable. Aguilar can run, he can throw. Merklinger can run and throw. I'm not worried about whoever they choose. The interceptions, like Tucker said, I'm a little concerned about that because Aguilar threw a ton of picks last year. No quarterback in this offense has ever thrown a lot of interceptions. Aguilar threw 14 picks last year. Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, Nico threw 15 picks combined in the last 4 years. Think about the difference in that. Now, there's different offense, but Aguilar cannot turn the ball over. If he does, Merklinger will be out there.
All right, so those are the 3 major elephants it feels like we've had to address with fall camp. Adam, any other major storylines that you're really monitoring right now?
I'm curious. I'm curious of the offensive line. I know we hadn't talked about defense, but I'm curious about the offensive line if they can put the right pieces together. Wendell Moy, I feel good about. Lance Hurd, I think, is going to be pretty good this year, but I want to know if all the pieces are going to come together, if Sanders is really ready, who's going to be the center. I think it's a coin flip between Satterwhite and Sam Pendleton. Jesse Perry is going to be in there somewhere, right guard, probably, but Pendleton can slide there. There's a few combinations there. I just think that's important. They have to get that figured out because they're thin at receiver. They lost it. They have to replace Dylan Sampson. That offensive line with a new quarterback behind them has to be good, and so that has to gel. And so I'm curious to see if they can find the right combination there.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point with the offense too. I know we haven't talked much about the defense, like you said, but there's just so much that we don't know about this offense. We don't know what it's going to look like, and going back to Lance Hurd, that's one where it's like you have to really prove that the injury was what was holding him back last season because was he getting improper criticism from fans because of that injury? That's an answer to a question that we'll find out later on this season. But now that you mention it, because we really haven't talked much about it at all, other than the Boot Carter situation, what are your initial thoughts on this defense going into camp?
Pass rush will be good. D-line rotation still going to be there. I think they're going to be good up front. Arion Carter, if he can stay healthy, I think is an all-conference caliber player. Jeremiah Thielander is going to be solid and very dependable. Secondary, I think, is probably going to be better than what people think, despite Jermod McCoy being out. I like Colton Hood that they picked up in the transfer portal out of Colorado. It's a funny thing that we say that about Josh Heupel team is that I'm pretty good and very good. And the fact that Josh Heupel's offense is a bigger question mark than the defense, I think, says a lot.
Yeah, it really does say a lot about a team about a coach that has not historically had great defenses. It's just been this weird narrative flip in the last few years. It's not something that any of us were expecting. Another note on camp that I had, because I remember this from when I was there. You don't really get to hear from the veterans early on in fall camp. You usually get to hear from the young guys. So, which of the young guys has impressed you the most, Adam?
The D lineman. I like Ethan Utley. Some of those defensive linemen, I think, are probably going to get a shot in the rotation. Travis Smith, the wide receiver, he looks the part. I mean, every year there's one of those freshmen that looks like he's older than he is. And Travis Smith looks like long, lean wide receiver, high 4-star, and there's opportunity there. And so it's one of those freshmen are going to play, maybe multiple freshmen. And Travis Smith would be the early pick. He's wearing number 1, Dante Thornton's number. He kind of looks like Dante Thornton, just his body type. And he seems pretty confident. He comes from a high school that's well-developed, very professional. And so I'm curious to see if he can be an instant impact guy. He kind of has to be. Somebody has to be in that receiving core because, as we mentioned before, they're not going to go all season just with the three guys that are coming back.
Well, Adam, you mentioned Miles Kitzelman earlier. I've been wondering, how has he been looking since he's been trying to recover from injury, and the same with Jermod McCoy as well.
Jermod McCoy is still going to be out quite a while. Don't have a timetable on him. It'll be a number of games. We'll see on him. Miles Kitzelman looks great. He's one of those typical injured guys that really, really, really wants to take the red jersey off and play and have contact. He'll be fine. They're going to keep him in a red jersey until the first game, just as a precautionary thing. But he's the alpha on the offense, maybe the alpha on the whole team. He's taken that role and run with it. And he's got a great relationship with Joey Aguilar, which could be a factor as this quarterback competition goes on.